Welcome back to See and Free Studio. This is the place where we discover what makes us unique, special, and different. I was just talking to my brother recently, and if anybody knows my brother out there, he is genius. He is multifaceted. He's good at lots and lots of things. And that's made it tough for him over time to kind of just pinpoint exactly what he wants to do because he's good at so many different things. And I think some of us have that problem where we have multiple interests, hobbies, vocations, things that we could do, and so we don't always know exactly what our USD is. And in other cases, we know exactly what that common thread is. And so I cannot wait to hear how our next guest has walked that path and where he falls on that side of the spectrum. Dwight Elliston is here with us today. He is a native of Jamaica. He immigrated to the U.S. as a teen and has spent the last 17 years in Atlanta, where he's given immeasurably to causes aimed to make the city a better place to live, work, and play. He co-founded the Atlanta Southside Up to strengthen neighborhoods and communities. He has worked on the Atlanta Beltline project and advocated for equity on the development of that project. He writes positive news stories of Atlanta for Atlanta in Town about the community south of downtown Atlanta. His day job is actually data analytics in the bank regulatory sector, so something tells me this guy is pretty multifaceted. Please welcome Dwight Elliston.
Thank you so much, and thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I've gotten to talk to you on the phone. We got introduced through a mutual friend, so I'm glad you could join us today. Dwight, will you tell everybody what you're doing these days? Obviously something in Atlanta, because you're doing a lot for the community, but what are you doing these days with your time?
Yeah, gosh, right? What am I not doing? But I'm not shuttling folks to get signed up for COVID vaccines. Um, so besides my day job, which I won't really talk about, my day job is in data analytics in the banking sector, bank regulation. So outside of that, I have been playing in the real estate market. I suppose what I would have to call myself these days would be a property developer. It's just an interest that I've taken into maybe about 6 years ago when I realized that the financial crisis had really hollowed out opportunities for the working poor to have a decent place to live. And so I decided that I would take some of my own money and figure out how I can be a solution. And so I started purchasing properties and renovating them and then renting them out in communities where there are, a lot fewer opportunities for economic advancement. So I've been doing that. I also started to pursue my passion, other passion, I should say, which is traveling. My husband and I travel quite a bit. So just right now we can't do that, so it's really painful. And as part of that travel, I generally try to find places where I can also pursue my additional interests of art collecting and also wine collecting. I absolutely love wines, and so I go to the different wine growing regions of the world and try to find interesting and unique grapes. And then from there, I generally travel with a wine suitcase. So I'll bring back a case of some interesting wines from some far-flung regions, and usually some rolled up canvas with some art. So that's kept me pretty busy. And definitely now that we've not been traveling so much, I just get the opportunity to really display my artwork at home and kind of rotate the things on the wall and remind myself of the time when we used to travel. So yeah, that's my world today.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I think we are all that wanderlust is and a lot of us these days, even if people weren't interested in travel before, they probably wish they could now.
Right.
Dwight, we talked about a little bit on the phone when we met about the concept of the show and, what makes you unique, special, and different. And as I was listening to you, I was like, this guy is like a Renaissance man. he's dabbled in a lot of different things, from the arts to to analytics to all kinds of different pursuits. So what do you think is that USD when you look at all of the things that you're interested in?
Yeah, I struggle with that question very often. I think that, being a left brain thinker and a right brain thinker, kind of, straddling both sides there, it's really, I think that is my USD really, because, it allows me to be able to explore so many different facets of life and understand the strategic and the tactical and see how the two are connected. Um, in my professional life, I mean, what I've learned over the years is that it's made it easier for me to recognize where I add the most value. And I've learned that, I should not be too much into the weeds, not too much into details, because the greatest value I can bring to an organization or a process really is to be at the 30,000 foot level and understand uh, the shape and the contours of strategy, and using that to really guide decision making, and help those who are working in the trenches to execute better.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. We've had a couple of guests talk about that. That it took them a while to figure it out because they do have these strong right and left brain qualities. But I think at the core of what I'm hearing for you, Dwight, is like you like to help people. I mean, you use that brain to help people make decisions, and you're helping the community so much. I mean, has that been something that's been common for you for most of your life, where you just want to help the communities around you and the people around you?
It is. It has been. I think because I'm a problem solver at heart as well. So, I do see, I do try to identify opportunities where I can help people. And that's something that seems to come naturally for me.
Yeah. Where do you think you maybe picked up on that? Because you talked about the fact you grew up in Jamaica, then you moved to the States.
Yeah.
Was there like a defining moment for you where you kind of discovered this about yourself, or did it just happen over time?
I, I think well, in retrospect, I suppose I have to say, uh, it may be something that happened over time, but I do recall a crystallizing moment for me when I lived in DC. Um, and I think this was in the late 1990s. I don't remember who was in the White House then. I guess, yeah. Well, it had to be Clinton. um, but I recall there was a moment I was reading something in the paper about um, the immigrant communities that live in along the 16th Street corridor that goes all the way up to Adams Morgan and beyond. And I I remember thinking about ways that I could just kind of add more value to my life, or find a more sense of purpose and meaning. And I wanted to do something, and I didn't want to do something that was like, I didn't want to teach English, right? Because I'm like, that's in some respects, I'm like, oh, there are lots of opportunities for people to do that. There's something else that I can add. And so I thought about the trajectory, of the immigrant experience, and me being an immigrant myself, and thinking about my own parents, my own situation. And I thought about ways I could add value there. And so I decided that I would go to this community center that was running classes in a church, and I talked to them about teaching immigrant household immigrant, immigrants. Then generally, I'm just like looking for an adjective here. How to use a computer and different kinds of technologies that can facilitate them to move from jobs in housekeeping to jobs doing things like fixing computers, learning to work in an office job, and so on. So it's basically creating more opportunities. And I remember that being a really um, seminal moment for me, where I realized the value that I can add outside of the work that I do professionally, and and that really inspired me to lean into that some more. So when I moved away from DC and moved to Atlanta, um, that became something that I focused on more intently.
Yeah, that's great. And I lived in Atlanta for a while when I was there with Coca-Cola. I know actually some of the projects that you worked on or that you continue to work on.
Right.
It's been going through a lot of change, Atlanta, for years and years, and growth and scale. What do you think is the most important thing to help the people of Atlanta these days?
Yeah, that's a loaded question,
I
Jen.
know it
Um,
is.
so, I was just driving in and I was thinking about, I was over there near the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and there's a new section of the Beltline that was just opened there, and it's gleaming, it's beautiful, and I look around and I'm like, wow, this is Vine City. The Beltline is here in Vine City, and Vine City had never been synonymous for the longest time. It has not been synonymous with progress and anything positive, right? And so I think that for me, the opportunities that I see really is um, identifying more ways that policymakers can make choices that promote equity and reduce inequality. Because ultimately, our lived experiences come down to the choices that we make on the one hand, but then the choices that others make that shape the environment in which we live. And so many of the less, more disadvantaged people in this region um, sometimes aren't aware that they have the power to affect change. And so I find myself being that voice very often for those who don't have that voice. Um, and I do that by writing letters to elected officials, do that by volunteering on different commissions, and being that voice and articulating the things that, are some of the unpopular things, or positions to take. Um, One particular thing that I'm carrying, I've been particularly incensed about lately is, people experiencing homelessness. I'm like, it is not okay to give someone a tent so they can live under the highway. It is not okay. No, we have to do better. We can do better. And if that means we have to, step outside the box and find some solutions, let's do that. But it is not okay. And we can't. We have to think about the language use. We can't call them urban campers, and they are not homeless people. No one is born homeless. They're a
Yeah.
person who is experiencing a temporary situation of homelessness. So yeah,
Yeah. No, I mean,
that's where I am.
I like it, and I mean, and I can tell you're passionate about it, and like you said, you've got kind of a unique perspective and abilities that a lot of people maybe don't have. Just your ability to problem solve and to take lots of information and make sense of it for people. And help these communities and use your voice. I mean, I think that's great, Dwight, that you're doing that, because I think people need a voice
Thank
more
you.
than ever these days. This is a part of the show where I like to ask a random question, and you get to pick a number between 1 and 25, and that'll be the
Okay.
question that I ask you. So, what
All
number would
right.
you like?
I'll go with the number that corresponds to the day of my birth, 17.
All right. Okay. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Wow. Okay.
Deep.
Uh, yeah. No. So I remember. Yeah. There's quite a few of them actually. So I have to say it was. There was one time we went. Well, we meaning my family, my dad and my brother. Actually, all of us did, even my sisters. We went to this farm that my dad, who was a country boy at heart, my dad used to rent a farm, which really was not really a farm. It was a patch of land that one of his friends owned. But it was this way of kind of having the country in this, what's really greater suburban Kingston. So my dad would take us there to go fishing, and to learn how to plant and so on. And it was much closer to home than the part of the country where he was from. So that to me was a really great and favorite memory because I learned how to fish. I remember just being in that valley, and I can picture it today. It was just so bucolic and was just such an enriching experience. And I because I'm the youngest, it's not I don't feel like I had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things with my dad because by the time I came around, it was like, he was always busy working and sometimes he'd work away from home for many weeks at a time. And so those times when I did get to go to that place with him is called Golden Springs. I do it's a memory that I cherish. Um, it's a memory that I cherish because I'm a mama's boy and I've always been close to my mom. So, whenever I got to spend time with my dad, it was just special because I'm like, okay, and I get to build that memory and those bonding moments. And even as when I became an adult, and I would take my dad on vacations with me. I think in very many ways I've kind of tried to recreate those experiences that we used to have when he would take us up to his plot of land in the country.
Yeah, that's great. I thank you for sharing.
Sure.
I think that those are the things that we need to hold on to. And I find it interesting that you are now, in property development, you're also taking land and doing something with it.
I
It's
know.
still all these
I
years
know.
later
Yeah, it
for
is.
other people.
All these years later, exactly. Because my
Yeah.
dad he was a home builder. That's what he did as his skills trade. So, somehow it's coming back full circle. I mean, both my parents are deceased now, but it's like, wow, okay, this is interesting that this is what I'm kind of gravitating towards. So,
Yeah, he's living through you. That's fantastic, Dwight. That's great.
yeah.
Another thing we like to do on the show is talk about and highlight organizations we want to support. And I know you're involved in many, but one that you wanted to talk about today is the Rosemarie K. Witter Foundation and the work that they're doing for lupus. Would you mind sharing some information about them and how people can get involved?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So definitely just go to the website. You know, our Rosemarie K. Witter Foundation. You can definitely just Google it. It will take you straight there. And Rosemary was my cousin, my first cousin. Um, and I didn't get the opportunity to meet Rosemary until we were both in New York together. Um, she moved away to New York shortly after I was born, and then of course, I followed several years later. Um, but Rosemary passed away from lupus, and we had a very special bond. You know, she helped me get my first job out of college. We used to go to, when I was in college, we used to go to she was already in the working world, but we used to go to check out the scenes in New York together. I remember going to the Nuyorican Poets Cafe several times with her. We also enjoyed wandering the streets of Midtown, going up through Koreatown as we tried to make our way home from work sometimes. And we tried just different things in the city, and it was kind of a really unique way for us to kind of bond. And it was unfortunate that she was diagnosed with this disease, and when she passed away, her mom, who's my aunt, and her sister, um, they decided to create a foundation in her name, specifically to help fund research for finding a cure and better therapies for the disease. So I was one of the founding board members, and I've since stepped aside. And but I continue to support the foundation to this day, and it's one that I do hold dearly.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I think lupus is one of those diseases that people don't know a lot about. I believe it affects the autoimmune system. And some
Yes,
of
it does.
I think some celebrities are bringing some attention to it. Nick Cannon and Selena Gomez. I'm seeing much more talked about it, but many of us don't know a lot about the effects it has on the body and how it can really affect someone's life. So thank you for bringing attention to it. I want to encourage people to please give to the foundation so that people like Rosemarie, who are suffering with lupus, can actually have a good life and continue to hang out with their cousins and see the town. So thanks, Dwight, for sharing that. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
As you think about, this COVID curtain being lifted and you being able to go out into the world again and enjoy it, what are you most looking forward to? Is there a certain trip you've got planned or some art or wine you want to go pursue?
Absolutely. So, we have some friends who wanted to go back to Napa, really. In fact, my husband's colleague and friend, Christy, has been really planning this. Like, we've got to go back to Napa. And our favorite winery there is, Brown Estates, which they're Jamaican stew. And so we love it out there. And so that's the first place that I'd like to go. The second place I'd like to go is South Africa. So definitely looking forward to those.
Yes. Yeah. I never got down to the southern part of South Africa. I need to make it back there too and see that. But if you do come to Napa, LA is not that far if you want to come down and hang out.
Right, of course.
Southern California, I'll show you the coast.
For sure. No, it's definitely on the list. My husband's best friend and his godchildren live in LA, so we do have to make a visit. So yes.
Perfect. Well, I'd love to meet you in person, you and your husband. So
sure.
Please consider it when you finally get lifted. Well, Dwight, I'm so glad you made the time to come on the show and that I got a chance to get to know you better. I really, really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you so much, Jen. This has been really a pleasure. Really glad I got the opportunity to highlight, some of the work that, I've been doing and the beneficiaries, especially the Rosemarie K. Witter Foundation. Definitely wish you all the success with this new venture. And, if there's anything I can do to help you promote your work, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I can always use another right and left brain person on my side. So thanks, Dwight. Well, that's another episode of CN Free Studio. Please visit us and subscribe at cnfreestudio.com. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find us just about anywhere. So please take a moment, subscribe, and come back and see us.